Minerva presents greetings, bookish friends, and welcome to today's literary escapade. Brace yourselves for an unforgettable adventure through the pages of Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Liking this video and subscribing following my channel is like giving me a virtual high five. It lets me know that you're enjoying what I'm putting out there. And hey, don't forget to drop a comment and let's interact. Part 1, Chapters 1-6. Humbert Humbert, H.H., muses about Lolita. H is born in 1910 in Paris. His father owns a luxury hotel and his mom dies when he is 3. His maternal aunt Sybil raises him. H is spoiled, makes excellent marks, and has many friends. Around age 13, La Beauté Humaine provides his only knowledge of sex. In 1923, he goes to a Lycean lion. H falls in love with Annabelle Lee and they experiment sexually but never find the privacy to have full intercourse. She dies 4 months after their last attempt at sexual involvement. H never gets over Annabelle's death, and he thinks that may be the cause of his involvement with Lolita. H.H. youth flies by. He uses prostitutes for sex, consorts with the intelligentsia of his day, writes a book, and teaches. He becomes fascinated with young girls, whom he calls nymphets, saying that any pedophile can pick out a nymphet in a picture of a group of girls. Annabelle, in the mature H's mind, becomes a nymphet. H does develop normal relationships with women his own age, but has to work strenuously at suppressing his lust for young girls who remind him of Annabelle. He learns that breast development occurs at 10.7 years and pubic hair at 11.2. He pretends to read on park benches to watch nymphets play, his scholarly book hiding his erection. H often wonders what becomes of nymphets after he possesses them mentally without their knowing. He meets a French prostitute who he thinks qualifies as a nymphet. After one sexual encounter with her, in which he is totally satisfied, he is not attracted to her the next time. H answers ads, but the girls are unappealing. He also meets with a girl who is brought to him by a female pimp. He rejects the girl, but is blackmailed for having sought sex with a child. Part 1, Chapter 7-12. In 1935, H decides for his own safety to marry and selects Valeria, a cubist artist. They marry and move into a rented apartment for a laugh-filled nuptial night. In 1939, H.'s American uncle bequeaths him money on the condition he live in the use and attend to his business. When H.H. announces the move, Valeria claims her passport is not in order and then announces she has another man. He asks for the man's name. It is a taxi driver, X, colonel from Russia. The colonel waits to carry Valeria's belongings out, giving H no chance to hurt her. H learns later that the couple, by then both corpulent, moves to California and takes part in an odd experiment by an American ethnologist. Valeria dies in childbirth in 1945. Another world war begins before H reaches New York, where he writes perfume ads, resumes work on his French literature text, suffers insomnia, and glimpses nymphets in Central Park. After 2 mental hospitalizations, H joins a 20-month expedition in Arctic Canada as a recorder of psychic reactions. H interacts with several psychiatrists but does not take the process seriously. H seeks a sleepy New England town in which to write and swim. He hears the McCoos in Ramsdale have a room to rent and a 12-year-old daughter whom H envisions a nymphet. Upon touring the house, he spies the nymphet sunbathing. It is the same girl, child, as H, Riviera love, peering over dark glasses. supple back, chestnut hair, polka, dotted black kerchief hiding juvenile breasts, and even a tiny mole on her side. A shiver of passionate recognition goes through H as he memorizes her body and compares it to his dead bride's. This Lolita is destined to eclipse her prototype. H.H. keeps a diary in 1947, whose contents his photographic memory now reproduces. H.H. sees Lolita at the clothesline and H.H. adores her bottom. Each successive day, H adores her bottom. Each successive day, H.H. adores different aspects of his Lolita. Finds Lolita trying to get something out of her eye, and H licks the speck out and is more excited than when fondling Annabelle. H agonizes over Lolita's characteristics. The three sit on the piazza talking, and H tells hilarious tales of the Arctic and manages to touch Lolita. H is sick with longing. Charlotte talks about Lolita growing up and asks H to tutor her next year. He does not commit, knowing that resisting temptation continuously in Lolita's presence would be difficult. On Friday, H fears another breakdown if he remains under such intolerable temptation. Saturday, fidgeting and shuffling to disguise her embarrassment, Lolita enters H's door, which he has been leaving ajar. She settles on his knee, but is distracted to go look in the basement when Louise comes yelling to come look. A couple days later, H searches for Lolita and circles back to his room and learns she has eaten the bacon off his breakfast tray. It seems a conspiracy of weather that keeps preventing a picnic they are supposed to have. Lolita holds his hand when her mother is not looking. Charlotte announces they will go to the lake Sunday after church. H realizes that Charlotte hates Lolita for being sweet on him, so he must at the lake dote on the mother, and at some point remember leaving something behind to enjoy an orgy with Lolita in secret. He knows Lolita will be compliant. 3 weeks of frustration have left H, close to insanity. Charlotte has not told him that another nymphette, Mary Rose Hamilton, is invited, and they will play happily apart, leaving Charlotte alone with her handsome lodger. Earlier, Charlotte hires a spinster, Miss Phelan, to sit Lolita while she goes to work in a nearby city. However, Miss Phelan breaks her hip. Part 1, chapters 13-17. That Sunday is as bright as predicted, but Mary Rose is sick, meaning the picnic is off. Lolita refuses to go to church. Freshly shaved and perfumed, H goes looking for Lolita, and when he finds her, she shows him a magazine picture of a surrealist painter lying on the beach beside a half-buried Venus de Milo. He hides his arousal, adjusting his robe and talking fast. As Lolita innocently shifts her bottom across his lap, H fights to put off the ultimate convulsion, repeating her phrases as his hand creeps up her leg, which, fortunately, had been bruised the previous day, allowing him to commiserate. As she laughs, head thrown back, H crushes out against her buttock, the last throb of the longest ecstasy ever experienced. Lolita goes to a movie with the Chatfields, and Charlotte sets an elegant candlelight table. She has decided to send Lolita to summer camp until school resumes, leaving Thursday. H is taken aback and pleads a toothache to cover his grim mood. He declines a call to Dr. Quilty. Lolita is angry about camp and says her mom and H want to get rid of her. They drive her to camp the next day. H knows he has fallen in love forever with Lolita. Charlotte, in a letter, confesses her love for him and offers 2 solutions: move out or marry her and have a baby with her. H dimly toys with marrying Charlotte to have his way with Lolita. The prospect of legally caressing and kissing Lolita 3 times a day seals it. He calls camp for Charlotte, but talks to Lolita, who almost seems to have forgotten him. Charlotte returns home and finds him in Lolita's room. Part 1, Chapters 18-23. The wedding is a quiet affair, with Lolita remaining at Camp Q. Thanks to highballs, H is able to evoke Lolita while caressing Charlotte in bed. She is intolerably tender at breakfast and takes his exasperation for the silence of love. Their combined income suffice for middle-class needs. In the 50 days they are together, Charlotte annoyingly glorifies the house. Charlotte and H.H. socialize with the few friends Charlotte has made. Thinking of Lolita Browning at camp, H.H. impatiently anticipates drugging and fondling her. Charlotte is crazily jealous of everyone in H.H.'s past, and he pads and invents to satisfy her. H.H. contemplates how a long confinement, caesarean birth, and complications could leave him and Lolita alone together for weeks. Charlotte talks about sending Lolita to a girls' boarding school. H.H. would have talked Charlotte out of it instantly, but he dares not give away his secret by suggesting he tutor Lolita. Back at the car, H. realizes he must destroy Charlotte. H walks back to their private beach, and H. contemplates drowning or poisoning Charlotte. He can't do it. As they lie on towels, Charlotte says she loves H and kisses him heavily. H.'s silence, when displeased, frightened Valeria, but it does not work on Charlotte. Charlotte announces they will go to England in the fall, and he objects, saying the female partner does not make unilateral decisions. She proclaims him her ruler and God and begs forgiveness. To press his advantage, H acts aloof and moody. She suggests vacationing at quaint Enchanted Hunter's Inn and asks what he would like for dinner. He grunts. She goes to bake a cake, something he does like. H checks that the key to his locked drawer, which Charlotte asks about, is in its perfect hiding place. H visits their doctor for a sleep powder to put Charlotte and Lolita to sleep until St. Algebra takes Lolita away from him. At first, Dr. Byron does not believe that his last prescription is inadequate to H. Is insomnia and suggests golf. H insists, and is given a vial of violet, blue capsules just on the market. At home, Charlotte is dressed as at their first meeting and does not respond. Finally, she turns and quotes his words about the Haze woman, the big bitch. She denounces him as a monster and threatens to scream if he comes near. She is leaving tonight. He will never see that miserable brat again. H goes up to his room and finds his little table raped and retrieves his diary from under Charlotte's pillow and fetches a scotch bottle and declares to her broad back that she is ruining both of their lives by hallucinating. Those are notes for a novel. Charlotte says nothing, and there is no answer when he announces drinks are ready. The phone rings. Leslie Thompson announcing Charlotte has been run over. Sure enough, Charlotte is not in the living room. H rushes out to see on the far side of their steep street a black Packard on Miss Opposite's lawn and police talking to Frederick Beale, Jr., driver of the Packard. His 79-year-old father lies beside the car to the right, while Charlotte's mangled remains lie under a lap robe on the sidewalk. John and Jean put him to bed in Lolita's room and keep vigil from the master bedroom. The funeral is as quiet as was the wedding. H is drunk his first night of widowhood and sleeps. When John, as Charlotte's advisor, asks H plans, Jean reminds him that he, not Harold Haze, is Lolita's biological father. H convinces a visiting cleric that his spinster cousin in New York will help care for Orphan, and after the funeral intends to take her to totally different surroundings. H.A.'s real reasons for keeping Lolita away is to prevent busybodies from scheming to take her away, or Lolita herself suddenly to feel distrust, repugnance, or fear and ruin his moment of triumph. Stodgy, solemn Beale talks to H and tells him the inquest absolves Beale of fault in the accident. Beale offers to cover funeral expenses and is taken aback when H accepts. H.A. weeps. Part 1, chapters 24-33. H.H. leaves Ramsdale obsessed with ethical doubts and fears. Having kept Lolita away from wedding and funeral, he plans to pick Lolita up at camp, saying her mother is undergoing a serious operation, take her sleepily from inn to inn, and eventually tell her Charlotte is dead. H.H. spends the afternoon in Parkington buying beautiful skirts, scanties, and swimming suits for Lolita. He ends his shopping spree by buying an elegant valise to hold all his purchases. He wires ahead for a room near the camp with twin beds and, nervous about how to word their relationships, mistakenly signs it Hamburg. At camp, the director gives a report of Lolita's camp behavior and commiserates about Charlotte's supposed illness. "Settle in the car," Lolita asks dutifully about her mother. H says the doctors do not know what the trouble is yet. They will get to the hospital in Leppingville, which has many theaters. Lolita has had a good time at camp but is not sorry to leave. When he claims to have missed her, Lolita denies he cares for her because he has not yet kissed her. She pulls off the road as quickly as possible, and Lolita flows into his arms and mouth. As they roll through town, Lolita remarks that mother would be mad if she learned they are lovers and insists that they are. H is anxious to reach the inn. Back in the car, she rejects a kiss on the neck, but admits to being fond of him. It is dusk when they reach fake colonial Bryceland. Lolita wants to see the movie for which people are queuing up, but H intends for her to be unconscious by 9 p.m. H learns at the desk that because of a religious convention and flower show, he has been unable to hold their room past 6 p.m. H asks for any room and a cot for his exhausted 10-year-old daughter. There is only one room available, with a roomy double bed. They will have to see about a cot. The room contains a double bed and mirrors on every door and other normal furniture. Lolita asks if they must sleep together, warning mother will divorce him and strangle her. H declares that for all practical purposes, he is her father and responsible, in mother's absence, for her welfare. They will be thrown together a good deal. Lolita helps him find the word for which he is searching, incest. Lolita wants to stop the kissing game and go to eat. After dessert, H produces his vial of pills and pretends to swallow one. As hoped, Lolita is curious and wants to try a vitamin X per pill. It works fast, and H sits her down on the edge of the bed, swaying and undressing. H heads downstairs for 20 to 30 minutes. Lolita's innuendos had not disturbed him, and he plans to operate on her only when she is anesthetized. H knows little about American school children, but he should have recognized that Lolita is different from innocent Annabelle, and that his expected rapture will turn to pain and horror. After wandering the hotel and fantasizing, H returns to the room. Lolita wakens as soon as H touches the bed. When her breathing suggests sleep, H climbs into the narrow space given him. After a long vigil, H closes in on her bare shoulder, but she sits up, gasps, mutters, and returns to her position. H burns with desire and dyspepsia. After fetching water for himself, H brings her a cup and, Watching her go instantly back to sleep, knows he should wait but cannot. Lolita moves at 6 a.m. and H feigns sleep, hoping she will not be shocked and perhaps bolt. She is energetic matter, a fact, and out of pride does not give up when HH has difficulty. He feigns stupidity and lets her have her way as long as he can endure. In boundless misery, H hopes to sort out heaven and hell in this nymphet love. H has read that in St. Louis, Chicago, and Cincinnati, girls mature at the end of the 12th year. Lolita is born within 300 miles of Cincinnati, so he has followed nature. He is not even her first lover. Lolita disjointedly tells H how she is debauched the previous summer at a different camp by a tent mate. Lolita's first heterosexual experience comes at age 11 soon after they arrive in Ramsdale. At camp this year, she has sex with a male camper, but is repulsed by the young man. H feels awful by 10 and still tingles from the feel of Lolita's demonic body. H asks again about his wife and requests the desk tell her they are driving to Aunt Claire's. Entering the car, Lolita makes sure that H sees her pain, calls him a brute, and then rides in silence. H feels panic beside this orphan with whom he has had intercourse 3 times that morning. She says she ought to turn him in for rape, and H does not know whether to take her seriously. He sweats as she claims he has torn something inside her and calls him other ugly names. She wants to call her mother, and H announces that Charlotte is dead in Leppingville. They have separate rooms, but during the night, Lolita comes to him, sobbing, having nowhere else to go. Part 2, Chapter 1-2. HH and Lolita begin extensive travels around the U.S., first renting double rooms, then a single one. Eventually, he grows bolder and rents singles. Occasionally, H gives in to Lolita's demand for a real hotel that she reads about as he is petting her on a side road. Plainer $5 motor courts become their habitual haunts. Lolita mopes for hours being cajoled, threatened, and promised things before giving H a few seconds of joy. He is not prepared for her boredom, griping, and goofing off. As they drive further west and the immediate threat diminishes, H threatens Lolita with the reformatory. However, H must avoid exasperating Lolita to the point that she reveals their secret. He reminds her of when she used to swoon over him and urges her to kiss her old man. Should she claim he has raped her, he will go to jail, but she will be institutionalized, knitting, singing hymns, and eating rancid pancakes supervised by a Miss Phelan. Lolita is thus terrorized into behaving, but also has goals set before her eyes to keep her happy. Lolita has no eye for scenery and resents having things pointed out. At his lawyer's suggestion, H writes frankly about their itinerary. HH's purpose is to keep Lolita in a passable humor between kisses. They experience the full gamut of American tourist life. They pass the winter in the desert, the spring in the blooming foothills. Yellowstone is somber, its geysers symbolizing HH's passion. Everywhere, H and Lolita fight. During longer stops, HH indulgently allows Lolita, after violent mornings in bed, to visit children's attractions. The first time, he lets her go to a roller rink, insists on sitting in the car outside, watching. Wherever they stop, H inquires about places where children congregate, and Lolita insults him for wanting to be caressed while he watches nymphets. Rarely does he find a nymphet who surpasses his Lolita. H tries to teach Lolita to play tennis, to have something in common, but C gets angry at his advice. In California, he hires a famous and expensive tennis coach. There are close shaves. One night, H loves too loudly, and in the morning, the virtuous conventioneer next door comments. H brings Lolita morning coffee, but withholds it until she does her duty. Part 2, Chapter 3, 10. Having satisfied her rash curiosity, Lolita becomes bored with HH's needs and becomes his cruel, frigid princess. H is constantly searching for the perfect place to make love to Lolita and at the same time find release from his obsession with the long D Annabelle. At one secluded spot, a woman and her children come upon him with the naked Lolita on his lap. He coolly gathers Lolita up and gets in the car and leaves. Another unpleasant incident occurs in a movie theater when two harpies mutter about his putting his arm innocently around Lolita's shoulder. Because of Lolita's obsession with the movies, they watch sometimes 200 a year. HH tells her he is sending her to a high class, no-nonsense, non-coeducational school. Once, they are stopped by police and Lolita Sweet talks them, seeming more afraid of the law than hate. H constantly wonders about the legal status of him as Lolita's stepfather. He researches the topic, but finds no definitive answer. He encourages Lolita to read some classics, but she doesn't want to spoil her vacation. H knows now that they should have scrambled across the Mexican border until Lolita attains marriageable age around 1950 and produces a Lolita II. And even Lolita II for his grandfatherly years. He does his best with Lolita I, but knows he is a failure. He decides to settle near Beardsley, a school for girls. He hopes to get a position at a small college in the same town. He has probably spent close to $10,000 on their vacation and needs to slow down the cash outflow. HH and Lolita arrive at 14 Thayer Saint, which Gaston Godin has rented from a colleague on sabbatical. Lolita occupies the couch, turns on the radio, and examines old magazines. HH hopes the expensive day school will provide Lolita a good education, but is told that it concentrates more on smell than spell, preparing girls to be housewives and mothers. Another reason for selecting Beardsley is that its playground can be seen from H. Bedroom's Betty with binoculars. His view of nymphets is quickly ruined by a fence, however. H remains never rude, always aloof of neighbors. His greatest concerns are a nosy spinster neighbor and the house-cleaning lady. Gaston, another neighbor, is too self-centered and abstract to notice H.A.'s relationship with Lolita. He keeps albums of the neighborhood boys. H prefers to hold their 2 to 3 chess matches per week in his own home. Gaston is too dull to hear Lolita practicing dance steps downstairs, which H pictures in his mind. Lolita's morals drop as she takes monetary advantage of HH's bass passion. He fears her accumulating enough money to run away to Broadway, Hollywood, or some dismal ex-prairie state. H skeptically reads columns advising fathers not to frighten boys away, but to welcome them and make them feel at ease. If daughters break rules, they must talk it over in private, lest the boys feel he is an ogre. H has lists of things that he absolutely forbids and others that he reluctantly allows. She seems to adapt better than H.A. had hoped while he lives in constant anxiety. Lolita's girlfriends are disappointing, bashful, formless, pimpled, fat, hairy, or too old. Lolita's closest friend, Mona, is intelligent, elegant, cold, and lascivious. She evades HH's questions about the kind of boys Lolita knows, but jokingly declares them rivals for the horse-faced reverend, Rigor. When Mona asks about the writer Balzac, H suspects Lolita is pimping him, but she glares at them together when she comes home and he leaves them alone. Part 2, chapters 11-17. One Monday in December, huge, frowsy, blunt Pratt summons H to review Lolita's progress. Feeling like he is mounting a scaffold, he sits on a lowly hammock. She asks bluntly if Ha is an old-fashioned continental father. He admits to being conservative. Pratt explains that Lolita's biological and psychological drives have not yet fused. She is attractive and bright, but careless and distracted, defiant, impudent, and rude to teachers. Her grades are declining. She mixes slang with big words. She sighs, chews gum, and giggles. It is Lolita's and God's business that she lacks religion. Having no chores at home is turning her into a princess. Teachers report that Lolita's tennis form is good, but her concentration poor, that she has either exceptional emotional control or none, that she cannot verbalize emotions, and that she is either myopic or pretends in order to mask scholastic incompetence. She seems morbidly uninterested in sex, and since Beardsley prepares girls for mating and child-rearing, Pratt wants the family doctor to explain the facts of life, and her be permitted to socialize with boys outside the home. Lolita refuses to discuss her home situation, but friends say that H vetoes dramatics. Pratt insists that he let Lolita play the nymph in The Hunted Enchanter, a part for which she excels in try-outs. Pratt threatens having Lolita examined by the school psychiatrist, at which point H says she can be in the play. Lolita comes down with bronchitis and spends a week in bed, during which H does not relent sexually. H throws a party for Lolita, inviting both boys and girls, which is a total failure. Lolita is totally caught up in her theater role. H notes the play's title and figures the play is an anonymous, whimsical, juvenile version of some banal legend, but The Enchanted Hunters is a recent composition, original and highbrow. Lolita forbids H attending rehearsals. When she mentions the inn where H rapes her, he feigns incomprehension, at which she laughs and rides off on her bike and returns with a hand dreaming in her lap. Lolita and H relationship becomes fraught with small fights and tension. He cannot control her and realizes she has become a teenager and capable of getting him in trouble while protecting herself. Their interaction is a series of bribes, extortion, and even occasionally genuine affection. She wants to do another road trip. They leave for Ohio, en route to the Continental Divide, where Lolita wants to see Magic Cave in Wace and Red Rock in Elphinstone, where a movie star recently committed suicide. Once again in wary motels, H pays for 2 rooms. He knows the telephone will be his downfall. At Chestnut Court, Lolita is listless, even about visiting her hometown. H is feeling good after a walk, but finds Lolita dressed, made up, and glowing diabolically. She admits to going outside briefly and sets to eating while H considers the boy's smile. He undresses Lolita, looking unsuccessfully for signs of infidelity. From then on, H keeps handy the small blue .38 caliber automatic that he inherits from Harold Hayes and learns somewhat to shoot from Farlow. Part 2, chapters 18-22. Great thunderstorms follow as H tries to shake the detective trap in his Aztec red convertible. H cannot say when he is first positive that the red convertible is following them, but remembers his first clear view of the driver at a filling station, talking with Lolita as though they have known each other for weeks. The next day, the red car is behind them and too powerful to outrun. In a factory town, a policeman lets H through an intersection but halts Trap. Mona writes Lolita care of the waste postmaster, describing the play's success with Linda standing in. Mona is going to Europe and may not be at Beardsley when Lolita returns, while H.H. reads the letter. Lolita vanishes. Forever, he fears. He paces Main St., unable to ask a policeman for help, peers into the stores, meditates in his parked car, inspects the park, and crazily expects Lolita to turn up. After 28 minutes, she does, timidly touching his sleeve. She claims to have met a Beardsley girl, and H.H. insists on verifying their time together, but she tells him to go to hell. He shows her the license plate number of her boyfriend's car that he has jotted down. H drives out of Waste with Lolita reading comics. At a picnic ground, he backhands her and immediately feels remorse. H knows a new cycle of persecution has begun. In Waste, H realizes that Trap is switching rental cars. H spies Trap stop behind them when they get a flat tire. When H walks towards him, Trap backs, laughs, and points. The blue sedan is rolling away with Lolita at the wheel. H thinks he is losing his mind and likely to end up murdering someone. He moves the gun to his pocket. At another stop, a bellboy summons him to an urgent long-distance call. H places 4 calls to various offices before bribing the attendant to confirm that the original call is local. He finds Lolita is playing doubles, but her round-headed partner flees to a gray car when he sees H. H notices Trap looking at them and vomits. They leave in the morning. In Elphinstone's Silver Spur Court, H and Lolita occupy the kind of pine log cabin that she likes on their first journey. Lolita is shivering and feels awful, fearing poliomyelitis as any American parent would. Hooch rushes her to Dr. Blue at the small but modern hospital. Blue diagnoses a virus infection, and Lolita is whisked away. It is the first time in 2 years they are separated, and H rushes back before dawn. Over the next 3 days, Lolita improves and H visits 8 times, bringing a bouquet and books he drives 60 miles to buy. He finds Nurse Mary Lore, who dislikes him, removing a tray on which there is a crumpled envelope that Mary says is hers. Lolita asks for her clothes, gray valise, and mother's trunk. In the morning, shivering, boozing, and dying, H asks Haze's boyfriend to deliver 2 bags. H passes word to Lore that H is staying in bed. When the fever breaks, H calls the hospital to hear that Lolita has checked out with Uncle Gustav, who pays her bill, and takes her as agreed to Grandpa's ranch. H races to the hospital, roars in the reception room. H announces he is not on good relations with his family and leaves a free man determined to find and destroy Gustav. Part 2, chapters 23-29. H begins a long and expensive tracking of Lolita and Trap. He stays in 342 motels and only picks up 20 clues. He believes Trap is playing with him. Trap comes close to slipping up, but never does, and H admires his skill. It is obvious that Lolita is in on the game by some of the clues that are left. 3 empty years follow. H seldom dreams of Lolita, but she haunts his sleep disguised as Valeria and A.R. Charlotte, a complex ghost at vivisecting parties. H destroys Lolita's insipid teen magazines, but other things are harder to relinquish. During his retreat, H composes a melancholy poem to his 5,300-day-old starlet in hiding, Psychoanalyzing the poem, he pronounces it a maniac's masterpiece, stark and lurid. He writes others, but never forgets about revenge. Losing Lolita hardly cures H of pederosis. He looks for nymphets to enjoy on playgrounds and beaches, but never thinks of sinking his fangs into one. 2 years of constant indulgence have left habits of lust, however, that he fears will either drive him insane or tempt him into action. Solitude corrupts him into seeking company and care in the person of Rita, a woman twice Lolita's age and 3/4 of H. She is slight, dark-haired, pale-skinned, with charming asymmetrical eyes, an angular profile, and supple back. They meet somewhere between Montreal and New York in the Tiger Moth Bar. Amiably drunk, she insists. They are schoolmates and holds his hand. H decides to give her a try, and they end up constant companion. They cruise at 90 and for 2 dim years, from the summer of 1950 to the summer of 1952. She is the sweetest, simplest, gentlest, and dumbest person imaginable. H includes her in the memoir merely to thank her for saving his life. Rita approves of HHA's plans to shoot Lolita's abductor and gets bruised undertaking a fruitless investigation of her own. They abandon the search when it is clear that Lolita is not playing championship tennis on the Pacific coast. H publishes an essay on Mimir and memory, which brings an invitation to lecture in New York from September 1951 to June 1952. He lodges on campus and visits Rita, whom he prefers not to display, in a roadside motel. Rita sobs that H will leave her like all the others. He amuses her with a French ballad, puts her in the car, and drives her to New York, where they are happy. In September 1952, H fetches the mail. Rita's mother on Cape Cod, who thinks she should marry H.H., and John Farlow's hysterical, bewildering letter. Busybodies wonder what has become of Lolita while he lives in California with a notorious divorcee. Another letter announces that Lolita is married and expecting around Christmas. Dick has a big job lined up in Alaska, but they need $300. $400. $400. Dick cannot know about her past. She has been through much sadness and hardship. He intends to find Schiller and kill him with his little black chum. H makes himself as handsome and smart as possible, drives to Colmont, and talks to the lone Schiller in the phone book. H asks at several stores before someone directs him to the last house on Hunter. Around 2 p.m., H.H., pulse fluctuating wildly, gun in his trouser pocket, rings the bell and sees Lolita, several inches taller, wearing pink-rimmed glasses, a sleeveless cotton dress, and sloppy slippers, heaped up hair, new ears, freckled cheeks hollow, shines, an enormous belly. He cannot kill Lolita, whom he loves at first, last, and every sight. She points out Dick, dark, haired in overalls, working atop a ladder on their neighbor's shack, and Dick is instantly reprieved. Her faded beauty reminds H of Botticelli's Venus. H demands to know where her abductor is, causing Lolita to bristle. She explains that Dick knows nothing. Raking up muck cannot help, and she is amazed he has not figured it out. When H.H. makes to leave, Lolita softens and whistles the name. It brings no shock or surprise to H.H., relaxing. Lolita says Dick the Lamb is the only man she has ever loved. Her relationship with H is a dull party, a rainy picnic, and mud caking her childhood. The past is the past. Lolita grants that H has been a good father, H.H., and Lolita sit apart as he asks about the betrayal. Smoking with her mother's mannerisms, she denies betraying him. Q likes little girls and is nearly jailed for it, but does nothing to Lolita. H does not intend to torture his darling, worn out at 17, whom he loves more than anything on earth or beyond. He begs her to leave Dick and this wakeful hole to live and die with him. When she refuses, H hands her $4,000, breaks into hot tears, and begs her not to touch him but to reconsider coming with him. She would rather go back to Q, who only breaks her heart, not her life. Lolita wants to call Dick, but H cannot bear it. Saying an accountant will contact her about her rosy financial situation, HH avoids a kiss, offers her the old car, and drives away in tears. Part 2, chapters 30-36. Leaving Coalmont around 4 p.m., H would have been back in Ramsdale by dawn had he not taken a shortcut that gets him stuck in mud. Cursing his plight and changing into old clothes, he walks to a farm and a wrecker has him out by midnight. Back on the highway and into a small town, he pulls over for a drink before proceeding to the Enchanted Hunters, weeping drunk on the impossible past. He sees with great clarity himself and his love. He relives the years with Lolita, knowing he has loved her in a despicable and brutal way and has at times known how she feels and experienced hell. He sees that even the most miserable family life is better than the parody of incest that he could offer Lolita. Returning to Ramsdale, H visits the cemetery to say goodbye to Charlotte. H considers entering the old house where he, Charlotte, and Lolita lived, but notices a dark-eyed nymphette in white shorts studying him, but a violent-looking, sweating man's glare reminds him that he is wearing muddy pants and a torn sweater, is unshaven, and has bloodshot eyes. He plods back to the car. On his way out, stout, Mrs. Chatfield recognizes him and asks with evil curiosity about his and Lolita's doings. He is happy to tell her about Lolita's marriage to a brilliant young mining engineer and asks if daughter Phyllis has ever told about being raped by Charlie Holmes. At his lawyer's, H hands over information about Mrs. Schiller and walks out into the sunshine, a contented pauper. H.C.H. sets out to execute Claire Quilty. With a loaded gun that aches to be discharged, H.H. finds turreted Pavor Manor, but decides to return in the morning. When no one answers, H.H. enters and finds in the drawing room evidence of a party. H.H. encounters Q and unwraps chum. Q recalls Lolita, but denies H.A. could be her father. H orders Q to concentrate on why he is about to die, arguing he rescued Lolita from a beastly pervert, took her on a joyride, and, being impotent, had no fun with her. Q suddenly lunges and the gun flies under a chest of drawers. The two men wrestle, and H acquires the gun again. He shoots Q after declining Q's offer of all Q's worldly goods to leave Q alive. He shoots Q again at close range and watches him die. Driving away, H picks up a police tail and pulls over, relieved. Rereading his story, H finds it too slippery. He has camouflaged names of people and places to avoid harming anyone. His own pseudonym, he feels, is the one that best expresses his nastiness. He starts writing Lolita 56 days ago in a psychopathic ward and completes it in a warm cell awaiting trial. He has decided not to parade Lolita in public, so his intended legal defense will be published only after her death. He would sentence himself to 35 years for rape, but dismiss the murder charges. He begs Lolita to be true to Dick and loving to her baby. He will haunt Dick if he mistreats her. Lolita should not pity Q. H has outlived him to make sure their story is recorded. It brings them immortality,